Alrighty guys, how's it going out there? Rooster in 10, roostercb.com with a little bit different style video today, and hopefully if you run across this it can assist you on making a good decision when out there buying some used equipment, or new for that matter. There'll be new equipment, used equipment, stuff like that in these type of videos. But never fails, I have a lot of people hit me up, even if they're not buying something from me. A lot of times they'll look to me to ask, hey, I found this amplifier, I found this antenna, I found this microphone, is this worth having, is it any good, should I stay away from it, things of that nature. So there's a list of items in the back of my mind that I like to call my blacklisted radio items, and it's simply items that I just won't buy, or if I do buy them, I buy them for such a dirt cheap price that I can't lose on them, and a lot of times I'll end up just turning around and selling them for parts or as is, just because the type of items that they are. So in these type of videos, that's what we'll be talking about, kind of the items you guys should avoid out there, at least in my opinion. Now if you're somebody that disagrees with what I've got to say, you can feel free to share that down in the comment section, or if you've had a bad experience with it, by all means share that as well. If you agree, disagree, indifferent, always comments are welcome on the radio channel here. I like to encourage people to participate in the community. So with that being said, we will get this party started, and in no particular order, the item for today's video isn't the worst, but it's just one that came to mind when I started thinking about doing these type of videos, because it's one that I see all the time, whether I'm seeing it in a repair shop or seeing it for sale at CB Brakes or Hamfest. And let's take a look at it here. I'm just going to type it in on Google, and it's going to be the Ameritron AL811H, and this is a bass amplifier. Okay, and we'll just pull it up on MFJ's website. For those that don't know, MFJ is essentially out of business now. I think they're just kind of clearing out some inventory, and I think they have sold the rights to some of their products to another company. So more to come on that, I guess. But let's take a look at this thing, and we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and so on and so forth. It's not all bad. Almost any item that I talk about here, it's not going to all be bad. Some of this stuff is going to have good qualities. So let's just get the good out of the way first, okay? So I will point out the good. It uses 4 relatively inexpensive tubes in the 811A tube, and that's the H model, if you will. So we're going to talk about 3 different models here, basically. We'll just kind of encompass these all together. Before I get started on that, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. The 811H has got 4 tubes in it, 4 811A tubes. They also make a model called the AL811 that has 3 tubes in it. It uses 3 811A tubes. And then they also made a model called the AL572, which used 4 572Bs, which they're essentially the same kind of tube as the 811. They just do more power, take a little more drive, and a little bit tougher tube, but we're going to get into that more as the video goes. So again, we're just going to encompass all 3 of those amps together. They're kind of all in the same family, but we've got the 811A pulled up here just for our example or whatever. The good about them, again, tubes are relatively cheap. Whether you go with the 811A tubes or the 572Bs, they're not the most expensive tube out there. They are a glass tube. As far as the design goes, Ameritrons are always laid out pretty nice. Excuse me. The tubes are mounted vertically, which is always a plus. I do not like tubes that are mounted horizontally or laying down. It tends to cut into the tube life significantly. So having the tubes mounted vertically is good. Ameritrons always use, good transformers and stuff like that. So typically you don't have transformer failures, things of that nature that you would in, some cheaper made amplifiers. Again, the tubes that go in them, they're relatively cheap. The amplifier itself can be found for a reasonable price, which we'll look up some on eBay here in a bit and kind of go from there, kind of look at that. And I'll kind of talk about, realistically what you'll pay for them, cash money as well. They do perform pretty well on sideband. I will say that. They're not a bad option for if you're just strictly a sideband operator, which during this video we'll look at some Eham reviews, and that's primarily what the ham operators will be basing their review off of, is a sideband operation, because hams, 90% of them are strictly sideband, with very little AM use, where CB is pretty much, 80 to 85% AM operation with a small amount of people, or smaller amount of people talking on sideband. But let's go down through here, scroll a little bit. I'm not going to read all this to you guys, but we'll just hit the high notes here. The rated output for the AL811H is going to be about 800 watts PEP. I think they rate the AL572 at like 1200 watts PEP. And then the AL811, which has 3 of these tubes, I think they rate it at 600 watts PEP. 4 rugged, fully neutralized, low-cost 811A tubes. Again, vertical mounting prevents the shorting of tube filament and prolongs tube life. So that's something that I always mentioned. Again, that's not hearsay. Whereas comparison, something like a Yaesu 2100B or a Heathkit SB200, they mount the tubes horizontally or laying down. Again, those are 2 amplifiers that very well may make the radio blacklist later, the radio equipment blacklist, but we'll get into that at a later date. Talks about the power supply here a little bit. 17-pound steel core transformer. Idle voltage is 1700 volts, and the load voltage is 1500. Air cooled. So yeah, that's pretty much your information about it. And then you come down here at the bottom, and they've got some tubes on here for sale. They may still have some tubes available. And you guys can see a 572B is $100 a piece, whereas an 811A is $54.95 a piece. So let's get into why I don't like these amps, and then what we'll do, we'll go look at the Eham reviews, and then we'll look up some prices and stuff on eBay, and then we'll round out the video. I'll discuss some options that I would go with personally before I purchased one of these, the 811A, the 811H, 811, or 572B. Well, the first problem with this amp is, in fact, the tube. I mean, after all, that's what the entire amp is built around, and if you have an unreliable tube, then you have an unreliable amplifier. And to me, that is the case with the 811 tubes and the 572B tubes. They are extremely fragile. They do not take well to being mistuned. And again, when you're tuning up an amplifier, it's going to be out of tune initially. They do not take well to that. Talking on these, using these out of tune, can cut into the tube life very quickly. They do not take well to being overdriven. Some tubes are more forgiving. These 811s and 572s, if you accidentally overdrive them, you run the risk of damaging them very quickly. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, CB is typically mostly AM operation. Okay, AM operation has your duty cycle is going to be a lot more tasking on the amplifier, because every time you engage or talk, you're going to have an AM carrier that is sitting there drawing power and heating your tube up, whether you're talking or not. That's the thing about AM. That's why a lot of people prefer sideband. It's a lot more efficient because your amplifier is only producing power when you're speaking and when you're talking. Whereas on AM, even in between words, if you're not talking, you're still putting a toll on those tubes and your amplifier. It's drawing current and generating heat and so far and whatnot there. So it's a good sideband amplifier. It's not a good AM amplifier. Well, I shouldn't say it's a good sideband amplifier. It's okay, but it is not a good amp choice for AM. I have seen people get these amps, brand new tubes in them, and try to use them on CB, and within 10 minutes they have flattened the tubes. Myself, I have used these amplifiers with 572Bs in them and saw the tubes, the power of the tubes go down as I was sitting there trying to tune the amp up, and I'm someone that's pretty careful. I'm like, 10 to 15 seconds trying to tune, and then give it some rest, give it 15 seconds plus of rest or whatever. And myself, I've damaged them. So that's obviously speaking from experience there. They do run on 110 volts, which is great, and the output of them is okay. As far as what you're getting with this amplifier, it's not too bad. But that's really the main downfall of it. Again, Ameritron has good features. The metering is really handy. You can keep up with your plate voltage, your plate current, grid current, and stuff like that. Obviously, being multi-band, tune load plates, nice features on the Ameritron. I don't have anything bad to say about that. They're all pretty much laid out the same. But really, what it boils down to is the tubes. And again, we'll look at some reviews here, and we'll see what kind of other people are saying about them. I'll tell you guys, I was part of a Facebook group on obviously on Facebook that was centered around Ameritron amps and troubleshooting Ameritron amps for a while. And I will tell you guys that I can say this without hesitation. I feel like about 85% of the troubleshooting posts that were posted in that group were centered around either the AL811H, the 4-tube version, the AL811, the 3-tube version, or the AL572 with the 572B tubes. And people just had all kinds of trouble out of those. More so the later models than the early models. I feel like towards the end of MFJ's kind of reign with these amplifiers, the quality did go down. And again, part of that is because the tube quality went down. But I feel like their quality control went down as well. So the older models of these, a little bit better. But again, that's if you can find those older tubes as well. But let's pull all these up on Eham and kind of see what our friends in the ham radio community are saying. Eham AL811H. And this is always a good place, guys, if you're buying something that is used primarily on ham radio. Of course, you guys know a lot of stuff that's made for ham radio we use on CB as well. This is a good place to start to see what these guys are kind of saying about it. And again, keep in mind that they're going to primarily be sideband operators, so take that for what you will. But it'll give you kind of idea of what's going on with these things. So here we'll just go through and look at some different reviews. I'll kind of skim through them here a little bit. This is our most recent review, and it looks like it was actually just posted last month. This guy's had his for over 30 years. Talking about driving it with his ICOM 7300. He's never used it on 10 meter. Has the original tubes in it, so that's something to kind of look back on. It does have the original tubes. Not perfect. So he's not really telling us a whole lot. He's basically just telling us that he's had one for 30 years and it has the stock tubes in it, and that's pretty much it. I don't even think that's not really a great review. So just some ham telling us that he's got one of these. All right, let's take a look at this one. This looks like it's a little bit longer. I no longer have mine. Having sold it in 2012, 2013, the amp design is solid, but build quality is inconsistent. Usually a thorough cover-off inspection by a qualified tech can address any of those concerns before you plug it in cheaply enough. But the major weak point, he misspelled weak, of this amp is its. He also misused its. Anyway. Tube complement 811As. When this amp was first designed, there were still marginally reliable 811s being made by several manufacturers. All that exists today are two Chinese makers, and neither one makes a tube that I would trust, one being even worse than the other. The tube was an inexpensive option for making RF when it was designed. It still would be if there were real 811s being made. If you have or plan on acquiring 811H, I suggest you plan on replacing those with 572Bs. However, this is still not the answer, as the 572B quality has also deteriorated rapidly as of late. It's sad. It's a great amp other than that, and the price has always been right. Okay, so that's kind of referring back to what I was talking about. It's the quality of the tube is the main problem, and he pointed out that there's only two Chinese manufacturers making them, and for whatever reason, these Chinese manufacturers have been making some pretty good tubes. The 500Zs, the big tubes, your 15,000s, 3,000s, 5,000s, 10,000s, pretty good stuff. I have a couple of very large amps over here that run Chinese tubes, and I'll be fair with you, I feel like they outperform some of the iMac tubes. But when it comes to these 811s and the 572Bs, they just have not figured it out. and got it down to where they're durable and the quality control on them is just terrible. So in other words, you may have to go through a couple of sets of tubes before you get a good set, and that can add up and be expensive. The aggravation with having to return them, having to go through that mess, it's just not worth it. Now they usually put a price. Okay, here, let's see here. Yeah, so they've got like an estimated price, what they value it at, and they've got MSRP at $899. It was $1,400, $1,500 new, and this is, they usually put a price up here for kind of what the going rate on these are, what they estimate a fair value. So there's a couple reviews. I mean, you guys can always check stuff out on here. You can kind of read, you know, what people are rating them out, power output wise. I think most will say, you know, 600 watts or so. They're telling you about the price. $800 to $1,000 is a fair price. I don't think I'd agree with that, but again, you got people saying dump the 811s and put 572Bs, but really, again, the problem is the 572Bs that are made today are not that much better. They're just about as bad. Let's go to eBay real quick, and we'll try to wrap this video up. I'm going to try to keep these videos 20 minutes or less, because I know you guys don't want to sit here and hear me flim-flam about radio equipment too long. So we've already looked it up. If you guys are ever wanting to look up prices on stuff, you just type it in up here, and then you want to get a really good idea of what they're going for, what they sold for. You can go all the way down here to the left and click on sold items. You don't just look at the asking price, okay? Because again, you can ask whatever you want on eBay all day long. It doesn't mean it's going to bring it. And one thing I want to point out here, guys, look how many of these things are up for sale, okay? Your stuff, your higher end radio equipment, unless it's like still being mass produced and you have dealers that are actively selling it, this should be a red flag for anybody. When you get on eBay and there's literally like a dozen of these things for sale, that's actually, well, that's the older version. I was going to say that's actually not a bad price on that, but when you have like a dozen of this thing for sale, look, needs repair. I think there's one on here that says it has weak tubes in it for parts or repair. High grid current. Okay, the tubes are drawing high grid current. Another one, high grid current. No tubes included. Are you guys seeing kind of the trend of what I'm talking about here? Untested, parts only. I mean, for one, there's a lot of them for sale, and the ones that are for sale, it's hit or miss. Parts only, again, 5 hours left on this thing, $346 plus $87 shipping, parts only. Let's see what they have actually sold for in the past. And when you guys look this up, it'll tell you the date too. So one sold September 26, $670 plus $45 shipping. Through here. This one sold twice. Looks like they charged $150 the first time. Chances are somebody won this listing the first time and they didn't pay, or this seller had somebody boosting their listing, bidding on it like a friend, and their friend won it and they had to relist it. So who knows on that. $800, $750, $900, $800. You guys kind of see parts only. Parts only, which parts only doesn't always mean they're broke. A lot of people will do that for like liability reasons. They're afraid of somebody doing a return on them, so they'll list it for parts only. Untested, very likely. So you guys kind of see somewhere between $800, $900 is what they go for. Now, realistically, what can you buy one of these for cash money like a Hamfest or something? You know, you're taking a pig and a poke, you're taking a chance when you buy one there. But I would say between $400 and $600. If I was buying one, the A11H, I might give $400 for one if it was nice. The 811, probably $300, and the 572, maybe $500. I just do not put a lot of value in these amplifiers. I've owned several. I've had trouble with them. The best thing you can do is get them running and get them out as quick as you can if you buy one of these. Again, if you're talking on sideband, it may be an okay choice for you, but if you're talking on AM as well, lots better options out there. You know, one option that I would look at you know, instead of this would be something like the AL80 or AL80B, AL80A, and that amplifier is also an Ameritron, and it runs a single 3-500Z. And anytime you can take one tube and do the job that multiple tubes are doing or do better, I would recommend doing that. Single 500Z tube, about 250 bucks. Sometimes you can find them cheaper. And you're going to see, you know, 12 to 1500 watts PEP out of it versus 800 watts out of this amp that uses multiple tubes that are not as rugged as the 500Z. The 500Z is one of the toughest tubes ever made. So if you're asking, well, I want something in this power range, what could I buy that would be better? Okay, I would go with an Ameritron AL80B or AL80A. But that's pretty much it, guys. I just want to do this video. I'm going to do some more of these. Again, take this for what you will. If you value my opinion on this type stuff, maybe it'll help you out. If you see one of these at a ham fest, CB radio break, whatever, my advice would be just to keep on walking. Unless you can get this thing for dirt cheap and leave yourself plenty of room on it, unless you're just strictly a sideband operator, I think there are other options out there that would better benefit you. And just stay away from the Ameritron AL811, AL811H, and AL572. These amplifiers, all three make my CB radio equipment blacklist. All right, thanks everybody. Rooster and 10, roostercb.com. Let me know what you think. Questions, comments, shoot me a text, 423-299-3535. And as always, check out the website, roostercb.com.